Now we're going to get into using all-in response, or the AIR tools. And these are the clicker systems that allow you to get 100% of the class response to a question. And we're going to start out with our demo PowerPoint import that we did. And I'm going to use all-in response. We have two options, teacher paste and student paste. Teacher paste is fairly self-explanatory. I, as a teacher, control when we move on to the next question. That way I can make sure everybody in the class has responded. This is an in-class or in-lecture activity. The student paste is something I can let the students work at their own pace. So I've given them an assignment that they can work on, and as they complete the questions, they can answer it using their clicker devices. For now, we're going to use teacher paste, and I'm going to pick my student roster. And I'm going to end up with two windows. This one is, if I had put in slide notes, I could have my slide notes and I could keep this on a separate screen so that I would have my notes in front of me. I can also use this to drive the presentation, so I can go to the next slide or go to the previous slide. In general, I do not use this, so you can close this window. Once you're in the actual demonstration window, so that you have the presentation slides and you have the control bar for your questions, you can actually drive this just like a PowerPoint. So I can click to go back, go forward. I can backspace to go back, or use a space bar to go forward. So driving this is extremely simple. You don't actually need the other control window for just an in-class session. I'm going to start my question. You'll notice there's a control bar down here. I'm going to run through a couple of the items. We have start question, so this is where I'm going to collect responses for the slide that you see in front of you. Ad hoc allows me to actually inject a question in the middle of the activity. So I may have my scripted activity for the day on the things that I want to ask my students, but they may not be getting it. So I may need to drill in some extra practice. I may do it on a chalkboard or a whiteboard. There's whatever format I decide to use, but that allows me to ask questions, still get 100% of the response, even though it wasn't part of what I had scripted for the day. I can pick a student, so if I want to actually call out on an individual student and use a randomizer, you can use that. We can go to the last questions. We can close the session. Whenever you close the session, that will actually create a report for you. And then on our options tab, we're going to have the option of showing the cumulative score to the students. So I can decide I don't want to show that, and I can decide if I don't want to show the response chart. I actually like showing it so the entire class can understand where they are at as a group. So I'm going to start my question, and I have 10 students in this class, and I'm going to wait for them to respond. And you do need to make sure that your receiver is plugged into your computer, and it's just a USB receiver. And so we're going to wait for their responses. And once we've received everybody's, it'll all show blue. Now you'll also notice that if it changes to yellow, that means the student changed their answer. If it changes to green, that means they just confirmed the answer. They put the same button twice. And now I can end the question. We'll see where our class was. And we're at 70% on this particular question, so we might review a little bit on what was misunderstood by the other 30%, but I can close that. Now we can go on to the next question. I'm going to start that, and we will wait for all of our students to respond. And we will end that question, and we have 100% got it right, so we're moving along rather well. And I'll go to the next question and start that. And I'm going to end that question. And again, 70% of the class got this one right, so we may need to review just a couple of things. And I'm going to go to the next slide. %, got this one correct, and we're going to do our last question. And we'll end it. Again, 90% got it right, so we're going to close this, and now I can close the session, and this will create a report. The report that we will see is going to be just in my window. and it will show me not just what the cumulative class response was, but it'll show me what the individual students were. So I can tell right here, Lumiere is usually my brightest student, and something's amiss there. I can look at my item analysis, and I can see what the individual responses were. Now, if you remember, we didn't attach standards to this, so we're not going to have a standards data report for this activity. However, I do want a standards analysis, and I'm going to now attach the standards after the fact in a very quick way. So I'm going to go to my edit key, and I want to add standards. And this particular activity, I only worked on one actual concept. So I'm going to go to that concept, and it was B. Well, let's say that I actually had two in this just for a good example. So if I was working on 1.B and 1.C on this activity, I can add standards to all questions or just the current question I'm working on. So I'm going to sit and select add standards to all questions. Now, I only have 5 questions, so what makes this really easy is that, let's say the first 3 only dealt with .B and the last 2 were .C. So I can simply go through and close the ones that don't belong to the question. Now I have standards attached. I'll save that. And so now the report key has been edited. We'll generate a new report, and this new report will actually have a standards analysis. So now I can go through and look at my standards, see who was weakest and strongest and who needs to be worked with specifically on what concept.